Guys, 2019 is nearly over. I can't believe it. It's gone so quick. 2019, what a year it's been. That also means the decade is over. Now, I feel like a popular thing in the rugby league community, in fact, just the community in general, is to go back and reflect on the decade. And there's been a lot of big moments in the NRL. Now, I'll go through and eventually talk about the best moments, best games, best sort of things like that. Do a few lists, but the list you're going to see right now, as you can tell by the title, is my top 5 favourite players of the last decade. Now, obviously, if you watch a few of my videos, you realise I'm a Bulldogs fan, so there's going to be a little bias here, but I'm going to try and make sure the list just isn't full of Bulldogs players. It's going to be a few Bulldogs players, obviously. It's just natural for me to pick them, but overall, a top 5, I think it's fair if I pick a few other random players as well. I will say, though, the players I do pick, they're not just there just for the sake of it. These are genuinely, like, my top 5 favourite players. Now, before I get into this, I'm just going to say, this isn't something that I've thought about for a long time. This isn't something I've went in depth with. It's sort of just something I thought of on the spot and went, who are my top 5 favourite players? Because, I mean, do you really think of your top 5 favourite players of the decade? Like, you don't really think back 10 years and go, who's your top 5 favourite players? You might think right now, I might think the last few years, but going back 10 years, it's a long time. There's been a lot of players who have played in the last 10 years, so narrowing it down to 5 is quite difficult. However, I think I've done it. Now, I just want to say, due to some circumstances that have happened recently, these 3 players I've ruled out. However, Ben Barber, Josh Reynolds definitely could have been in that top 5. Whether they would have been, I'm not sure. But Ben Barber at one point was easily my favourite player in the NRL. Josh Reynolds has always been a Bulldogs fan favourite. And just with the stuff that's happened recently, also he's moved to the Tigers, sort of dropped out of it. And also Jared Hayne, just being a New South Welshman, he's been incredible for New South Wales. And at times definitely could have been in that top 5, but due to sort of even just the NFL stuff and all the stuff that's happened off field, he's kind of ruled out, so I thought I'd just mention them. Also players like Dale Finucane, Jason Tambalalo, Cameron Smith, David Clemmer, James Tedesco, Michael Ennis, Luke Lewis as well. I mean, there's so many I could name. I mean, it's 10 years. It's very hard to narrow it down, like I said. There's a few honourable mentions for my top 5 favourite players. Anyways, the honourable mentions are done. Let's get into the official list. Let's start at number 5, Jonathan Thurston. Now, for Jonathan Thurston, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think he'd be in a lot of people's top 5. I think he'll be a number 1 on a lot of people's top 5. I mean, he's been a great player. For me, I can't have him at number 1 because, I mean, he's a Queenslander. It did cause me a lot of heartbreak for many, many years. However, what a player. I'm so glad that he got his premiership. I thought for a good while, I didn't think it was going to happen. Well, I know he got one at the Bulldogs. I'm very well aware, obviously, a Bulldogs supporter, but I thought it might have just escaped him, like it did Matty Bowen. Matty Bowen's another one you could have thrown in the honourable mentions. What a player. But, I thought it was just going to escape him. However, all the cards fell in the right place, and he got it. And what a way to do it as well. Not only did he win the premiership, but he kicked the winning field goal. Would have been great if he kicked the goal from the sideline, but what more can you say about Thurston? He's just the ultimate competitor, just always gave 110%, even up till the end. I mean, the last year, probably played a year too long, but the effort was still there, and that's what you want from a lot of players. A lot of players you look at and you say, man, is he even trying? Jonathan Thurston was definitely not one of those players, and that's why he makes my top 5 favourite players of the last decade. Now, moving on to my number 4, it's actually quite an interesting one. I don't know how many people have him on their list, but I'm going with Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Now, he's at the Warriors at the moment. He's kind of off the radar a little bit if you're an Australian. You don't really hear too much about the Warriors apart from when Shaun Johnson left, but Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, highlights machine. I mean, I was tempted to throw Callum Pong in the honourable mentions or throw him in here as well. All these sort of players, you have those highlight reels. They're just so fun to watch, and they're sort of easy to put in your top 5 favourite players because they're just so likeable. I mean, you look at all their highlights. They're all steppy. They're all great. They're very entertaining, like I said. So people are just going to be attracted to their gameplay. So yeah, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck definitely right up there. One of the best steps in the business. I'd say probably the best step in the NRL, that's for sure. Maybe Ponga up there as well. But yeah, Tuivasa-Sheck, he can just step on a dime. He's so bloody good, and probably underrated for how good he actually is. And him playing at the Warriors kind of, I think, hampers his, I don't know, star power, I guess. But when he was at the Roosters, he was electric. He's gone to the Warriors. The first season, I thought he was a little bit dodgy at the Warriors, but he's really shown. He got the Dally M medal. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, just an incredible player. I wish he was at the Bulldogs, to be honest. I wish he was playing in Australia, to be honest, just so he got a little bit more, star power, a little bit more credibility to his name. I know he's got the Dally M, but everything's just, James Tedesco this, James Tedesco that. I think Roger Tuivasa-Sheck he's been amazing for the last decade. So yeah, that's why Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is in my top 5 list at number 4. Moving on to number 3, I was just talking about highlight reels. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is pretty good, but this guy's even better. Shaun Johnson. This guy has been incredible. Ever since he stepped into the league, he's just been outstanding. I mean, the first year, he took the Warriors to their first and only grand final, partner James Maloney. Now, he finds himself at the Sharks, and I gotta say, the Sharks kind of sat on me a little bit. He just hasn't been as good. Plus, I don't know, him and the Warriors, it just fit. He was their captain, New Zealand captain. It just seemed like the perfect fit. The fact they got rid of him, it seemed crazy to me at the time. Maybe it's going to work out for them. I don't really know. But Shaun Johnson at the Sharks just seems wrong to me. However, the guy is just a highlights package, really. Overall, is he the best player? Like, is he one of the best halves? Probably not. He's definitely capable of it on the day, but in terms of just entertainment value, likability-wise, he's just 10 out of 10. Such a good dude, Shaun Johnson. And that's why he's number 3, really. I mean, just go and watch any of his highlights. Same as Tuivasa-Sheck, and you'll realize why they're on this list. They're just outstanding. Show them to any sort of casual fan, and they'll go, holy shit, like, this rugby league shit's pretty good. Now, we've just had a couple Kiwis. Now we move on to a couple Aussies. In fact, the twins. It's very hard to separate these two guys. I'm going to say Josh Morris is my number 2. However, Brett Morris is kind of there as well. I mean, I've kind of liked both of them. However, Josh has spent majority of his career at the Bulldogs. Obviously spent majority of this decade at the Bulldogs. Came in 2009. Been an outstanding player for the Bulldogs. Great service. It was an absolute shame he had to leave. Meanwhile, Brett, I think, came in about 2015, 2016, something like that. Spent a lot of time at the Dragons. Obviously being great for the Dragons. But what puts these guys so high? I mean, Josh Morris was my favourite Bulldog, hands down, for the longest time. I think the fact that his dad was my teacher at school definitely played a hand in that, but I did have major investment in the Morris boys because I wanted Brett to come across to the Bulldogs. I think Bulldogs fans all over wanted Brett to come and join up with Josh, and eventually when it did happen, we're like, yes, you beauty. It didn't really pan out well for the Bulldogs. Didn't get a premiership or anything, but it was good to see the two boys playing with each other. The only time they're going to get to play with each other, apart from Origin. Who can forget State of Origin 2014? Both of them got injured. I think it was the same game too. Josh did his knee, made that big tackle on Greg Inglis, I think it was. Brett Morris did his shoulder, played, I think, the whole game with his shoulder, making tackle after tackle. Big tackle, especially because it was such a tight game where one try could have decided it. And yeah, both of them just played that hard out for New South Wales. And the fact that they eventually played for my team together. I know Josh played for them at the time, so there's that little bit of pride. Same way as like when Trent Hodgkinson scored the try, you're like, yeah, that's the Bulldogs guy. So Josh Morris playing a big role in the 2014 win. It was special for Bulldogs fans, I think. But yeah, overall, Josh Morris has been an outstanding player. Even at the Sharks, I do like him. And I was just talking about Shaun Johnson kind of losing a little bit when he moved to the Sharks. Josh Morris, to me, it doesn't really change anything. He's at the back end of his career. He's actually still playing well. Obviously, played Origin last year, which is a big step for Josh Morris at this stage of his career. It says a lot about him. Maybe find himself in reserve grade. Who knows, with Bronson Terry and Jesse Ramey in there. I wish Josh Morris would just finish his career at the Bulldogs. That would have been the fairy tale finish. Whether it's going to happen, who knows. But yeah, Josh Morris been a great player. One of the best centers. Probably the best defensive center of the last decade. One of New South Wales' best. Just a big fan of Josh Morris and Brett Morris for that matter too. Now we move on to number 1. Now, you would have seen throughout this list, they've all been backs, which is, I mean, no coincidence. I think the backs, they're more the flashy players, like I said, with Tuivasa-Sheck and Johnson, all the highlight reel players, and Thurston has been so likable on and off the field. Now we move on to our first forward. He's in first spot. We're going with the British Bulldog, James Graham. What a player. I don't even know where to start with James Graham. I mean, maybe the best place to start with is just to say how inspirational he's been for the Bulldogs, even the Dragons to a degree. I mean, Dragons have got him at the back end of their career, and I mean, their team is in shambles at the moment. But let's just talk about his Bulldogs career. Definitely a fan favourite at the Bulldogs. Was absolutely gutted to see him go. It feels like all of our captains end up getting shafted. Josh Jackson is probably next. Michael Lennis got kicked to the curb. James Graham got kicked to the curb. And yeah, Josh Jackson, better watch out. But James Graham, just an absolute warrior. That's the best word to describe him, I think. He just leads from the front. He just goes and goes and goes. Gives his 110% for the whole 80 minutes. And I mean, he was quite capable of playing 80 minutes, which is a big thing for a forward. Maybe not so much these days, but when he first came to the NRL, he was, I don't know, he just had that little bit of a step at the line. His ball playing was outstanding. I mean, the whole joke at the Bulldogs was the Bulldogs didn't have halves. We just had James Graham playing as the halfback. That's just how good he is. So he's very skillful. I think he's even put in a few grubbers here and there that have been quite effective. But just the aggression, the tenacity, but also, I'm not going to say he was controlled, but he knew his moments. He led from the front. Even look at the grand final. It didn't work out very well. I'm talking about 2014, not 2012 when he beat Billy Slater's year. That's why I'm not going to say he has controlled aggression. But just look at the grand final. I mean, the big hit on Sam Burgess was a head clash, put his body on the line, but it was a big time to do it. Like, if you're going to do something like that, do it in the first tackle of the game. Like, do it to their best player. I know it sounds grubby, but James Graham does have a little bit of grubbiness in him, which is, I think, what makes him such a good player. And I think if you ask all the players who played with him, they probably all say the same thing, that he's quite inspirational and they all enjoyed playing with him. I think he lifts them. Even in training, I can see him as the sort of guy who just spurs them on to become a better player. It's just crazy to think that when he first came to the Bulldogs, he was coming off the bench and Aiden Tolman and Casiano were starting. Yeah, he's just Bulldogs captain, one of the Bulldogs club legends. A shame he didn't get a premiership, a perennial grand final loser. Just makes grand final after grand final and then loses all of them. But I can't fault James Graham, an outstanding player in the last decade. One of my favourite Englishmen ever. Probably my favourite Englishman ever to play in the NRL. Actually, definitely. He's definitely my favourite Englishman to play in the NRL. And that's why he finds himself at number 1 on this list. Anyway, guys, that's my list done. Leave in the comments section, who are your top 5 players of the last decade? Also, while you're at it, it means well go ahead and leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Also, make sure to follow me on social media. We have my Twitter and Instagram. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Local YT. My Facebook page is also in the description below as well if you want to go ahead and give that a like. Also, add me on Snapchat, Mr. Local YT. Same as it's on the screen right now. Anyway, guys, that's the end of the video. Let's wrap it up. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.